We're about to get a sneak peek at the heroic mode for the Menagerie 6-man activity in this week's issue of the Bungie weekly blog, This Week at Bungie. What's going on, Guardians? My name is the Black Link, and you heard that right. It's Thursday once again, and we're here to cover all the biggest bits of news covered in the Bungie weekly blog. And this one is basically all about the Menagerie. We've got a busy week here in the world of Destiny 2. Iron Banner is currently live. A lot of you hunters are sitting right now stuck on that grenade kill step. But as time goes on, we've got more new content coming in. Next week, June 25th, we are getting the Menagerie's heroic mode. This is going to see some pretty big changes, including no matchmaking. You're going to need to have your own group of Guardians ready to dive into this game mode when this date rolls around. And thankfully, this week's TWAB gives us some pretty in-depth information about how the heroic mode for the Menagerie is going to be changing. Let's jump on into it. Here's what Callus has lined up for our most powerful Guardians. First up, for heroic mode, it's going to see an increased power difficulty, starting at 750, increasing up to 770 power. Meaning by the time you get to the end of it and you start completing challenges, it's going to be throwing enemies who are at least 20 power levels higher than what's currently available as max. Basically putting us in the exact same situation we were in before, when you got to around 720, started feeling good in the Menagerie, like, hey, I can start tackling these challenges. You complete a few activities and suddenly Callus was throwing 740 enemies at you. I think that's actually a pretty good mix for difficulty when it comes to power level in the Menagerie, to the point where it's going to be challenging. These enemies are going to be stronger than what you're used to, but it's not going to be unbeatable. Definitely a far cry away from what we experienced way back in like Black Armory, where we jumped in and suddenly we were fighting enemies that were like 30 power levels higher than us. Good change. Next up, of course, Matchmaking Is Disabled. You must form a fire team to enter. Additionally, weekly curated gameplay modifiers rotating per boss. Which is interesting, so each week when we have a different boss in the heroic version of the Menagerie, you're going to have a different set of gameplay modifiers active for that encounter. Now, whether or not it's going to be some of the admittedly awful strike modifiers like iron and whatnot that are active right now, or if they're going to use some of those legendary heroic adventure modifiers, the Mercury ones. Stuff like elementalists and other modifiers like that, or entirely new ones, is yet to be seen. But it does look like they're going to be spicing up those boss fights just a little bit with different modifiers to change the way you play. Hopefully they're not terrible. Additionally, unlike normal mode, Guardians can hit a failure state in the Menagerie. Extinguish is going to be active. If your entire team wipes, Callus is sending your butts right back to orbit. And beyond that, encounters never repeat. If you fail to reach 100% progress toward the boss after completing each encounter once, you will be returned to orbit as well. Finally, heroic mode specific triumphs, rewards, and challenges will await you. There we go, some pretty major changes coming to the Menagerie with the heroic mode, and I've got to say, that sounds a bit more difficult than the normal mode there. I mean, bumping up the power of the enemies by at most 20 what we're currently able to reach is going to ensure that it's going to take a bit of power to put those things down. Power and coordination. Of course, there's no matchmaking, so you're going to have your own curated fire team as you head in, but the addition of modifiers plus kicking people to orbit if you happen to fail a challenge, right now in the Menagerie, one of the most interesting things about it is the fact that there is no fail state. If you fail the challenges, you basically are just going to be spending more time in the Menagerie until you build up enough points to get to the boss. Even during the boss fight, there's no real fail state, since no part of it is really a darkness zone. That's all changing here with the heroic mode. It kind of reminds me of the way things used to be back in raids in Destiny 1, where like revive tokens I think were only a thing in the heroic versions of raids. So if everybody wipes, you're back to orbit. If you don't complete a challenge, say you're in the gauntlet and not everybody makes it through that race, you're back to orbit. That's going to make this a much more difficult environment than it currently is. And personally, I'm fine with that. I love the prospect of an additional challenge. My only gripe, my only thing was always, please make it worth the challenge. And that, of course, is tied to the rewards. And I'm very happy to see that we're going to have some heroic mode specific triumphs, rewards, and challenges here. In particular, I really want to know what those rewards are. Is heroic mode going to have its own armor set, its own weapon set? That's definitely something I would be looking forward to with the heroic version of this. Again, I compare this to the raids back in Destiny 1, where the normal version of the raid had a completely different set of weapons than the heroic version. You could pretty much get all the armor in normal mode, but you only had a few weapon options, and some of the best weapons in the game were generally tied behind the heroic versions of raids. Well, except for the case of like the Black Hammer in the normal version of the Crota's End raid. So anyway, it's going to be really interesting to see what the tangible rewards are for running the heroic version. If it's not worth it, I don't really see too many people trying to get 5 of their friends together to go and run the heroic version of the Menagerie. There's got to be something there. There's got to be that carrot on the stick to drag me back in. And while the TWAB does say rewards there, which usually does refer to like some kind of armor or weapon set or even ornaments or something like that, when you've already got stuff like the Austringer, the Epicurean, all these fantastic weapons available in the normal mode, it kind of makes me wonder what could be left for the heroic mode there. And that brings me to another thought I had over the course of the week while playing through the Menagerie. I would love it. Absolutely love it if going forward in Destiny 2, they expanded upon this game mode, adding in new bosses and updating the loot pool with different combinations of stuff and adding in other classic D1 weapon frames with a gaudy kind of golden jewel-encrusted callus tinge. I think it'd be a great idea and a great way to bring some of those old weapons back, just like it is with the Austringer. It's a fantastic hand cannon, and some of the other Menagerie-specific items are absolutely worth the grind. Get out there and collect these things. I think that'd be a neat idea moving forward. But alright, Guardians, that is actually pretty much it for the biggest bits of news that dropped in this week's TWAB. We're a few weeks away from Guardian Con. You'll be seeing some reps from Bungie there, as well as a few people right here from on the channel. And in another week or so, we have got the release of the Lumina quest, so make sure you're staying tuned to that. But there we go, that's the news about the Menagerie's heroic mode, dropping next Tuesday on June 25th. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the challenge and seeing exactly what rewards are going to be enticing me to go in there with my buddies. But alright, thank you Guardians so much for watching. Those are my thoughts on the Menagerie. Leave me yours down in the comment section below. How would you feel about them expanding upon the game mode and adding in more D1 classics? Be sure to let me know. Any particular weapons you'd like to see? I would love it if we got like a BTRD styled LMG. That would make my day. But alright, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. And that's going to be it for this one. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.